Hi Sue, how are you?
How are you doing?
I am well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited for the conversation and you know, all
Good.
things all things joy, which is it not? I'll get into it. I was excited about this. The conditions that lead to it. All right. Awesome, awesome.
Please, please just remember I'm not a neuroscientist.
That's okay. Me neither.
Awesome. We're equally screwed.
All right, folks, let's get rocking and let's get rolling. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, greetings, salutations, and blessings from wherever you're joining us today, from wherever it may be. We are recording the conversation. Cynthia and our team will be editing it, cutting and pasting, and sharing a lot more of our discussion today. But, folks, when did work become something we're expected to survive rather than somewhere where we're allowed to thrive? Now, because if we're honest, how does work feel for many people today? A lot of people I speak to, speak to work being meh, speak to work being, see, very few say work is amazing, right? And surely that's a concern because are people arriving at work with empty backpacks and they're leaving carrying financial pressure from family responsibilities, organizational change, uncertainty, pressure, stress, bullying, toxicity, policies, culture that they have to adhere to, wearing of a mask, etc., etc. And have we simply accepted that that is the way it should be? Now, interestingly enough, I was really thinking about this and doing, quite a bit of review, and I thought to myself, if I had to ask leaders today, what creates high performance? I would probably get answers like strategy, accountability, leadership, clear goals, and great people. How many leaders will actually use the word joy as part of that? And that's exactly what today's conversation is all about. Not because joy sounds nice, not because organizations would simply make people happier, but because there's an increasing body of research that suggests something fascinating. The emotional conditions people experience at work influence how they think, learn, solve problems, collaborate, and ultimately how they perform. And perhaps joy isn't simply an outcome of great workplaces. Perhaps it's one of the conditions that help people that helps create great workplaces. And that's what we're going to explore. And joining me today are not only you, our amazing audience, and yes, for those watching the recordings, you too. Um, and also, but if you're watching the recording, sorry, you missed out because here we've got Sue with us and you could have asked a question and had it answered, right? But Sue Wellman is joining me today. She's an executive coach, leadership, and organizational development specialist, not a neuroscientist. And she's a professional
I wish I was.
Oh, you wish you. But she's a professional certified coach with the ICF or the International Coaching Federation. And over many years, she's worked alongside leaders and executive teams from banking, mining, healthcare, telecoms, FMCG, government, helping them lead their way through complexity, navigate change, and build healthier, high performing organizations. Sue, from one non-neuroscientist to another non-neuroscientist, but to someone who's got amazing experience, wisdom, and qualifications. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Now, folks,
So,
sorry, so I just want to say to everyone, they can ask questions. There's a Q&A, there's a chat. Please, as we go through, ask your questions because, hey, we got Sue with us today. Let's see what she can help us unpack. All right. Um, Sue, yeah, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate you. And Sue, before we continue, how would you define joy? And especially joy at work, rather so that we have a similar base by which we are working. Because some people say, is it joy or happiness? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to ask Sue. So I'm asking you, Sue.
so, maybe just a step back. I always approached leadership development and work in organizations from a very intellectual perspective.
Mm,
But about 10 years ago, I immersed myself in a new style of thinking in the world called ontology.
mm,
And ontology speaks to our way of being in the world. And one of the key areas that ontology looks at is our emotive spaces.
Hmm.
And so when you asked me to speak about joy, I was thinking actually emotions is where we act from. So the philosopher Heidegger says our emotive spaces is what opens us to possibility or closes us to possibility. And so if you really want to affect change, whether it's at work or at home or in a relationship, you need to understand what's going on in the emotive space,
Hmm.
which then brings me to joy. I think joy, we often think of joy as just a feeling. You either feel it or you don't feel it. The same with happiness. You either are happy or you're not happy. It's all feeling related. And yet, joy is something so difficult to define because it's unique to each person. Because what gives me joy and what gives you joy and our listeners' joy is all going to be different. And so I think there are almost two things to put on the table beside each other. The first one is joy just a feeling? Or is it also an approach? Is it a discipline? Is it a commitment? And I think there's something to be said for both.
So please say it for both, because those are two sides of the coin, and often that coin is in flux motion or it's static, right? Um, so please give us a bit more insight into those two forks or those two sides of what joy could be.
Yeah. So I think let's start with what I think is a very much a traditional understanding of joy, and that's the feeling that I feel.
Mm.
So if I feel joy, I know I'm happy or I have joy. And that is I suppose the easier part to say, well, I feel it, therefore it is.
Mm.
And yet there's a huge amount of studies and thinking that is linking towards positivity
Mm.
as an active mindset and as a practice. And in fact, they go as far as saying that positivity, which then leads to the experience of joy, is actually a deliberate decision.
Mm.
It's a focused decision that looks at understanding my reactions to things, finding hope, even in the difficult times, and practicing gratitude. And that then lays the foundation and opens the opens the door to the feeling of joy.
Mm. Mm.
And so, yes, the feeling of joy is what we strive towards. That's what we all want. We want that buoyancy, that happiness. Um, but we often think it must just arrive.
Yeah.
And we forget that actually we have a responsibility in getting there. We can't just sit and wait for joy to come to me. I almost need to take the responsibility and put in the effort to meet it in order to get it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm. It makes absolute sense. It's like sitting on a couch wishing for weight loss, dreaming of exercise, and thinking about healthy eating. Uh, guess what? It's not going to happen. You need to get up and meet it. So I love that. And so when you look at business, I mean, is business taking, let's go higher level. Is business taking emotions seriously and it's really part of a nice to have versus something that everyone is talking about? So I'll talk to it and bring it in as a leader. Compliance checklist item, or is emotions and joy being part of that, as we describe, Is there a need for it to become a serious business strategy?
Mm. So I think there are pockets in business that's starting to take it seriously.
Mm.
Um, Understanding emotion and understanding its impact in actually it impacts directly the bottom line is something we're very passionate about at Nabantu. And we actually go out of our way to engage with businesses about it. I think a lot of businesses are still caught up in that confusion of emotion being linked purely to emotional intelligence and not having a direct impact on the bottom line. But there are businesses that are starting to take it seriously. So we've been doing work with one of the major banks who have gone through a huge restructure. And they realized that just doing the practical of it was not enough. And they brought us in to really work with their key leadership and in holding the emotive spaces for themselves and upskilling them to hold those emotive spaces for their teams.
Ooh.
That doesn't make the change process any easier because we don't like change. And when you get impacted, I mean, it touches every part of your life. But we really believe that in upskilling people to have a self-awareness of how it's impacting not only on them, but on the people around them, enabled them to lead better, enabled them to show up better. Um, but in the end, it also comes to the choice and responsibility.
Thank you for sharing that. I read an article from Forbes, and it actually came out on the 8th of July, 2026. And the title of the article is Why Joy at Work is a Serious Business Strategy. And I'll share the link to the article. And they said here in the intro is that in most companies, the real risk is not too much joy, it's too much grind. And the smartest leaders don't wait for morale to collapse before listening. They build earlier signals into the culture through habits like a stay interview. I've never heard of that. So what I love about this article are these interesting nuances, which I'll get back to. But another piece of research which is quite interesting today is Barbara Fredrickson's work on positive emotions in broadening our thinking. And earlier we spoke to joy is an emotion, right? What does that mean in practical terms for leaders and teams? That in positive emotions can broaden our thinking.
Well, in ontology, we look at people and teams and organizations in three completely interlinked circles. So the one is our emotive states, but equally linked to that is what ontology refers to as our languaging. Now, our languaging is how we make sense of the world. So it's not only how I speak to the world, but also how I listen to the world. So what information I take in and what meaning I then attach to it. And then I act on that. And ontology says my emotive state influences how I make sense of the world. So think about it like this. If I'm in a positive state and you come to me with a good idea, I'm more open to listening to you and to act on it. Whereas if I'm in a negative state and you come to me with the same good idea, I probably will shoot it down or find 10 good excuses as to why we shouldn't do it. And so if you have positive teams, happy teams, they're more likely to deliver. They're more likely to deliver good quality. They're more likely to be open to innovation, to change, to finding ways of doing things differently. And in ontology, we would call that ambition or wonder and curiosity. And that doesn't mean that things aren't tough or that everything's going hunky dory. In fact, part of it, ontology says, it's our ability to push through those challenges and approach those challenges with positivity that enables us to reframe and see the opportunity in it.
Reframe with positivity to see the opportunity within it. When we get to work, when we leave work, there's the traffic component, there's the personal component, there's the home component, there's the work component. And in hybrid workplaces, yes, they are interlinked and intertwined with digital enablement. It's that always on culture, but so how do we do this as individuals, leaders, team members, employees? Do we switch on or off if we're dealing with things in our personal life? And then get back to work. And then in work, we're trying to see these opportunities and utilizing positivity in that space. Are we still authentic? And is that something we should be aware of? Or how do we actually find a bridge between us dealing with things in personal capacity, because they do impact us at work? What would your insight on that be?
The fact of the matter is, we take all of who we are wherever we go. I think a lot of people like to say, I have my home self and I have my work self. But we take all of ourselves everywhere. And so when I work with leaders, it really is about saying, can I be self-aware? Can I be aware of what's going on within me? What are my triggers? What are my emotive spaces? How's that impacting on how I'm able to show up? And then can I also be aware of how I'm impacting on my environment? If I'm impacting positively and I'm getting, good results, then keep going. Yay, great. But if I realize that I'm impacting on you negatively, I'm impacting on this relationship through my current way of being, well, then hold on, pause. What needs to change? What conversations do we need to have? How can I shift in the moment in order to get a more positive outcome? And if I'm able to do that, and I'm able to do that consistently, then I'm able to always bring my most positive self to every moment, to every relationship, to every engagement. Now, that's the ideal. But let's be honest, we are also human. And I don't know about you, but I mess up regularly. And I teach this stuff.
Girl, you are preaching to the messer upper around, yes? I embrace that fully.
So I've learned the humbling art of saying I'm sorry when I've messed up. And that's not an excuse. So I always strive to bring my best self. But when I have failed, is to address that and make restitution.
And that emotions. I remember a few years ago in our business, we were going through many changes, and my team members brought it up a couple of times that this one client makes them feel like a doormat. And as a leader, I was like, hey man, we're making great revenue out of them. Let's just continue and do it. But in listening and seeing the impact on the team and the language being used, we embarked on a journey of emotions as a leadership team. And when I was asked, what does emotions mean to me as Ronald? I was like, emotions are a pain in my ass, personally and professionally. That was my language. Um, Emotions in different generations, in different environments that we are now in, from in person to a lot of digital. What is the one or two foundational components of emotions? Because we hear a lot about emotional fitness, we hear a lot about EQ, we learn a lot about, or hear a lot about um, EQ, emotional quotient, emotional fitness, and empathetic leadership. That's used a lot. If if every leader has to look into the mirror and honestly have a discussion with themselves on emotions, joy could be it's a lag, it's one of them, right? But on emotions as a whole, and you look at your ontology framework and thinking, what would that discussion look like for leaders to have this honest conversation with themselves first, to become aware of emotions?
Sure. So let me make myself vulnerable and confess to everyone. When I did the ontological course many years ago, I thought, that emotions stuff, um, I've got it. I know it. I mean, how hard can it be? And probably the module that created the biggest shift for me personally was the emotions module.
Mhm.
And I think it's also why, because I could see the shift in myself, why I'm also passionate about taking that into business. To think if my emotive space is where I act from, if that is the space that allows me to see possibility or blinds me to possibility, it shocked me to think, looking back in my life, that there might have been times based on my emotive state that I could have walked past 10 open doors of possibility and not even see them. That was terrible to me because I live for possibility. And business preaches possibility. So then it becomes so important to understand emotions. But we're not necessarily equipped with a language around emotion, and definitely not in the workspace.
Mhm.
Um, how do you feel? Fine. Um, okay, tell me a bit more. I'm angry. We're quite limited in our descriptions of what we're feeling. And so one of the things we did is we actually created a box of cards. We call them emotions cards. And it gives you a description of each emotion at the back of it. And when we started working with these cards in our own team, you might say I'm angry, but when you actually look at the description of the card, you could realize actually I'm not angry. I'm actually frustrated. And what's the difference? And
Mm.
we've started working with these cards in business and with teams because people find it hard to talk about emotions. And when we speak about emotions, we use about 10 words, you know. um, but emotions are so much more complex and so much more descriptive. But often leaders struggle to have that conversation without an external facilitator.
Mm.
And so we created these cards to empower leaders to be able to have those emotive conversations with their teams. And in fact, quite a few of them have said to us they've taken them home and being able to use those cards to have conversations with their kids and their loved ones because we've not been trained to have emotive conversations.
Mm.
In fact, I think most of us have more been trained to avoid them. This is hard. I'm uncomfortable. Um, let's just move on very quickly. or we
Yeah.
just go, blah, and I throw all of this at you because I don't know how to hold it. And now I've just thrown it at you, and now you sit with it and you don't know what to do with it.
Mm. Yeah, yes, yeah, yes. I'm receiving. I'm receiving this. I'm receptive to all of this, and as I receive, I reflect, and I hope that everyone else is reflecting too. So, when we speak about the work an individual does for themselves on emotions, like I said, I am receiving. In a workplace, not everybody's on the same page. Not everybody's open to what we are speaking to. Some of them might still be reserved in their different capacities, and work is work depending on the type of generation we may be at, etc., or dealing with. um, what would your insight be if someone is doing the emotional work, awareness creation, looking to have those conversations, but it's their colleagues or their team members, and upwards and downwards, even your leaders are not receptive to this. That could also lead to frustration and just detaching from the workplace and doing what I need to do to pass the day. What would your insight be to that individual that is struggling with that?
Sure. I think there's a dual responsibility.
Mm.
And I think there is a responsibility from the organization to understand the role emotions play and to understand the importance of it and how the organizations often buy it or buy into it is if you can show them that unless you are aware of people's emotive states, you're not going to inspire them. You're
Mm.
not going to shift them. You're not going to uh, move them to possibility or ambition. So you're not going to get the best out of people unless you create, as an organization, that emotive space.
Mm.
For individuals who are doing the work themselves, but find themselves in an environment where it's not being uh, respected, I think we often approach conversations from our perspective. So I often come to you with my message. And I know what I'm trying to get out of my message to you. But I forget that communication's not linear. It's not a case of I speak words, you understand. I need to actually put my message in your language. Because if I need you to hear me, I need to be aware of you as my audience, and I actually need to translate my message in a way that makes sense for you, that you can hear and engage with and interact with. So if we go to business and go, oh, joy matters, you should buy from us, they're going to roll their eyes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if we go to them and say, if you're serious about your bottom line, if you're serious about getting the best out of your people, if you're serious about creating spaces and environments that retains talent, then you need to be serious about emotive spaces.
Mm. Mm. Speaking the language that resonates with them,
Yes.
where they don't just listen to you, they hear you, you feel it, and you're speaking not at them, but you're speaking alongside what's important to them that they need to deliver on or be accountable for.
Yeah. In fact, psychologists have said if I can speak to you in your language, you're more likely to like me.
Mm.
You're more likely to trust me. You're more likely to buy from me. And people might be saying, but Sue, I'm not selling something. We're always selling. I'm either trying to sell you an idea or a concept or a process or a budget or myself. We're always
Mm,
selling.
absolutely.
Whether I'm trying to sell myself to business or sell myself to the person I'm hoping to date, we're always selling. So you need to understand that person's world, understand their language. And I think the other mistake we make is we think, as I said, that communication's linear, but they've proven that only 7% of communication
Mhm.
is the words that we use. 93% is context, tone, body language, understanding your audience, understanding how to connect with what matters to them. But we get so caught up in what is it I'm wanting to get out of this conversation? And I speak to you from my language. And then I am surprised that my message isn't landing.
Mm. Oh, I love that because as we speak about this, joy is one of the emotions, but yeah, I see emotions as being the glue in all of this to context to intellectualize it, but also then to I'm going to make up my own word here, so emotionalize it, you know, for people to resonate. Because there's one thing of being relevant, but there's a second, in the T axis of knowledge, of being relevant, but also being resonant um, with that individual. But so, in your experience, as we speak about emotions and joy and so forth, when you step into workplaces, and your experience is so vast, even government experience, where do you find this work on emotions, where joy is, and one of them? Where does it sit in the workplace? Is it well-being? Is it culture? Is it L&D? Because I've seen it. We work with banking clients and other clients as well. In the L&D department, there's an emotional, learn about emotions e-learning. In wellness, it's contain your emotions to help you contain it, and then there's a talk if it's needed downstream. In culture, there's always the words on a wall rather than the feeling that is experienced every day. And in there's also the coaching component, for lack of a better phrase, could be under HR or L&D, where we're coaching individuals, and that's where it stops. Where do you think it should be, and where do people currently bucket it? And where do you, if you had this magic powder, that you could sprinkle and say that's where this should sit, this work on emotions?
Yeah. So my experience is very similar to yours in that it's currently scattered all over, which means it doesn't really have a full focus.
Okay.
Maybe if I could divert slightly,
Oh.
our our bodies. So the third component that ontology looks at is our physical spaces, our bodies. And our bodies and our physical wellness also has a direct impact on our emotive states. So if we're not taking care of our bodies or we're struggling physically, it is going to impact my emotive state. But I can also use my body positively to change my emotive state. So one part of the work we do is what we call mood maneuvers, is how to shift my emotive state. And there's a whole lot of things, and one of them is using my body. If just movement, stretching, there's a whole lot of body exercises you can use to shift your emotive states. So my opinion is that the work around emotions is or belongs in every area. However, because it's not championed and doesn't receive focus from a specific area, I think it kind of gets lost, or it only has success in pockets, or is only appreciated in like small pockets. I think there needs to be a champion of emotions, even though it should sit in all of the areas. And if you're going to ask me where that champion should sit, I suppose historically it would sit in the culture space. Uh, but I think even within the culture space, it hasn't really been seen from the perspective of that's where we act from. It's been those nice words on a wall, the values, or, the things we aspire to. It hasn't been a case of this is where people act from. This is where, I almost want to go as far as say where things might get made or broken, you know. Um, and so I think my opinion, it should sit in the culture space, but I think it needs to get a different focus within that.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah, here we go. Culture leaders, culture managers, culture executives be coming for you. Sue, as we wrap up our conversation, if a leader or a manager or an employee, is listening to us right now, and if they had to remember just one thing from our conversation today, what would you want them to remember about not just joy, but about emotions at work? And
Sure.
emotions, not just at work, but I think at work is one component that I'd like to add an extension, and emotions in life.
Yeah. I think the one thing to remember is just because we don't feel an emotion doesn't mean it's not there. I think in so many ways we've been taught to almost squash things. Our emotives, we are emotive beings, whether we are aware of it or not. We'd like to think we are logical beings. We are sentient beings. Our emotive states is what drives us. It's what opens possibility to us or blinds us to it. And so if you desire possibility in your life, then you need to understand your emotive states. And you need to engage with it. And with that comes a huge responsibility. For me, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they think emotions is just about feeling. And I believe that with that feeling comes a responsibility to respond to our emotions, not to react to them. Because it's often when we're reactive that we don't show up positively or in our best selves. But when we can take that moment to self-reflect and respond appropriately, then I think we start moving powerfully in the ability to use emotions to change the world.
Amen to that. Use emotions to change the world. I love that. Sue, there's a question. Literally, my WhatsApp was beeping now. So there was a call and I cut it and then I got the WhatsApp. I think they're making sure I ask this question. Question um, is my past experience of life, in brackets, they said trauma, hurtful experiences, shutting down experiences from childhood into different workplaces and spaces. Does that impact my ability to identify, manage, and enhance my emotions?
Yes,
That's a question.
absolutely. So remember I said ontology looks at us in three completely interlinked circles.
Mm.
The one is my languaging. It's how I make sense of the world. And my languaging is my history, my past experiences, um, my value system, my beliefs, my assumptions. It's all of that. And so my past has a direct impact on how I make sense of emotions and the moods I find myself in. In fact, in ontology, we no longer speak about my posture. They're starting to speak about my acture because we carry our history in our bodies. And so true self-awareness isn't just about how am I feeling. True self-awareness says I need to understand myself in all three spaces because they're completely interconnected. I need to understand my body. I need to understand my past. And I need to understand my emotive states. And though my past and my emotive states are so interlinked because the philosopher Heidegger, he says that we are driven by our emotions, and literally that a lot of our history sits within our emotive states as moods. But because I've got this mood now, but I might not understand where it's linking to in my past, I can't connect it. But this mood is still driving my behavior today. So in order to connect with my emotions, I do also need to understand my past.
So you and I could do a mini series on this stuff because it is absolutely phenomenal, and I made so many notes. Let me I made so many notes from the conversation today. So Sue, thank you so much for sharing and for giving us insight, and you gave absolutely generously. You are valued, you are appreciated, and a lot of gratitude to you for sharing.
No, it's a pleasure. I mean, emotional literacy in business is something I'm deeply passionate about. Um, and speaking as somebody who was completely emotionally illiterate, I confess. But it's a powerful journey.
No, it is, and that's why I definitely believe that, and I'd love our team to reach out further and let's talk about this emotional literacy because there's work to do, and if people are open to the work, we will share. And then please, you got to reach out to Sue further, you know, at Nabantu and the great work that they're doing in organizations and so forth. And it really is to, you know, we started off the conversation with joy today and we ended off drilling into emotions because joy is one of them, right? And we know that emotions are like they are a rainbow, sometimes quadruple rainbows, with good, bad, hard, ugly, hurtful, joyous emotions. It's a vary. I don't know about you, but I can feel about 10 emotions in a moment if I have to. You know, multiply that with my ADHD brain of a Ferrari and the brakes of a BMX. My thoughts and intellectualized ability often takes over my emotive ability and I rationalize it. So I've got work to do. And I'd love to share that journey with you. So folks, to everyone who joined us today, Ngiyabonga, Danki, Nzakenza, we appreciate you. Sue, you even more. Oh, I am so much more informed and I've got a lot of homework to go do. And not to delay the homework, but I'm going to put it into the diary to do the homework. And thank you so much because this conversation didn't simply change how I thought about joy, it changed and a reminder also of the way I need to embrace this literacy around emotions. And I love the cards because the tool I got given and the team got given a few years ago, as I described that journey, was the feelings wheel. But I love the cards because the feeling wheel is just a drill down into what a name of the emotion is rather than the definition of the emotion. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. That is awesome. That is awesome.
Pleasure. And also remember they're no good or bad emotions.
Okay.
Emotion it's a data set. It gives me information on how I've made sense of what's happened. What I choose to do with that emotion then becomes good or bad.
Ooh.
So anger in and of itself is not bad. Anger, sometimes that emotion I need to get myself up that mountain. It's what I
Oh,
do with an emotion becomes good or bad. So there are actually no good or bad emotions.
my God. So you've just now, we're going to do another webinar on the foundational pillars of emotional literacy. Folks, our time has come to an end. I really hope, Sue really hopes, we really hope that today's conversation changes how you lead and how you live. Thank you all for being here. Sue, thank you so much. And to everyone else, have an amazing day, filled with a rainbow of emotions that, Sue really shared today. So cheers, everyone. Until next time, catch you on the flip side. Bye.
Bye.